Well, this is certainly gonna make things interesting, won't it? The entire season, we've had really interesting conversations about the Anaheim Ducks and their one forward highlight reel star, Trevor Zegras. Mostly because, heading into the 2023-2024 season, there was a lot of doubt as to whether or not Zegras would be able to participate because he didn't sign a contract extension and he didn't get a training camp because he signed his contract very, very late into the offseason. But right now, the 23-year-old, 6 feet, 185 left-handed forward is on a 3-year deal. It goes on to the end of 2025-2026. He's making $5.75 million a year. And when you talk about a guy who has posted up back-to-back 60-point seasons in 75 and 81 games a season, you could realistically say that with the highlight reel plays, with the offensive capability, the playmaking, the skills, etc., there's room to believe that Zegras is going to get better, and that 5.75 is a pretty reasonable deal. He's 23 years old, so he may become a 70 or 80 point player, and then you have guys like John Bucci-Gross going out there and saying that he thinks Zegras has a Datsuk-like ceiling, and whether or not that's true or not, you can debate in the comment section. We already made that video. But this season, Trevor Zegras is sitting at a whopping 9 points in 26 games played. Now, he has had a bunch of injury issues throughout the year, but this season, I mean, if you take a look at some of his recent games, Friday against the Seattle Kraken, he has 12 minutes time on ice. On Tuesday against the Calgary Flames, he has 18 minutes, he has an assist. On Sunday against the Vancouver Canucks, he has an assist and he has 19 minutes. He's played in limited minutes, depending on which game you're looking at, ever since he returned. But right now, what I wanted to do was talk about some comments made by Anaheim Ducks head coach Greg Cronin in regards to Trevor Zegras and what the bar of accountability is. This comes to us from Anaheim Ducks reporter Derek Lee. And I know what you're thinking, wait a minute, no, it's not the Derek Lee that does the Ottawa Senators stuff. This is Derek Lee in Anaheim, who does the hockey news content, writing and covering all the newest Ducks stories. I asked Greg Cronin today on whether he feels the bar of accountability is higher when it comes to Trevor Zegras specifically. Here is his full response. Here's a guy that's attractive. The media likes him. The NHL likes him. Whatever those sports games they play, he's on the cover of that. Yeah, NHL 23. You know your stuff, Greg Cronin. He's a very sociable, likable kid. He bounces around. He's like a butterfly. Talks to everyone in the locker room. So those qualities, to me, when you draw that attention, you need to take that attention and convert it into some leadership. And if you frame that leadership around being great and trying to be excellent every shift, then you're in a win-win situation. Okay, pretty calm so far. These are pretty good comments. I mean, Greg Cronin is acknowledging the superstardom that Trevor Zegras brings with him, not in terms of like point production or on-ice leadership, but in terms of like the media. The fact that he is the media's darling and he's a good guy to talk to and he's a great interview and he's got an infectious personality, and that whenever the NHL does crazy stuff, he's always there, like the dodgeball blindfold and the NHL video game, he's on the cover of that. Okay. Let's get into the second part of Cronin's comments, but if you sabotage all of that goodwill by taking foolish penalties, or you turn pucks over multiple times and end up changing the momentum in the game, then you have to own up to that too. It's been a process with him, but I do think anybody that draws attention, there's an opportunity for those people to create an image and a standard for the team. And if they don't do that, they're missing out on, again, going back to creating a non-negotiable standard. And I've talked to Zegras about that, and it's up to him to actually execute. And that is a very drawn-out and long response to the question as to whether or not the bar of accountability is higher when it comes to Zegras. In short, the answer is yes. And Greg Cronin very particularly labels both the good and potentially the bad with Zegras' game in a way that's really interesting. He acknowledges Zegras' positive aspects and what makes him such an attractive personality, but then follows it up by saying, yeah, if you sabotage that, if you take foolish penalties, you turn the puck over, you put your team in a worse spot, then that's a no-no. Like, he's very directly calling out Trevor Zegras in a way that I wouldn't have expected. If you had asked me at the beginning of the year, let's go out there and read some of the responses to this tweet because it does get an interesting conversation going. So he's getting treated differently because he's a popular player? That's a terrible response, MK goes out there and says. I think Cronin holds him to a higher standard because he knows he has the skill to be a special hockey player. Yeah, but he didn't say that. I'd have less of a problem if that was the quote. And of course, you have to read in between the lines here. What does Cronin say and what does Cronin mean? Obviously, putting him to a higher standard is because there's higher expectations out of this guy, which means that we know that he's better. Thanks for asking him this question, Derek. It's crazy, though, how he punishes Zegras because he wants leadership, while the vets and those wearing A's in their jerseys get a pass. The age-old question, right? Where some players are treated less harshly than others for making the same mistakes. Cam goes out there and says, yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. He's held to a different standard than anyone else. He is also held to a different standard than other young players on the team. There are a few Ducks fans, though, like this one, Larry, Ducks Forever, going out there and expressing some concern with this. This coach is going to chase off one of our best young players. What a garbage answer. You hold him more accountable than other players because he's marketable? Geez, I'd request a trade if I was Zegras. Now, there are a few other responses that are devil's advocate points of views. That interpretation totally lacks context. Cronin and Zegras have a tremendous relationship. Cronin was proactive during the summer and beyond. They have very strong communication and mutual respect. Okay, so if that's the case, I could totally get on board with this, but the way Cronin talks about it in the media, talk about protecting your players, right? I don't know. This is totally not in that field, so I'm kind of intrigued as to what the rest of the hockey world thinks about this. Obviously, we have seen different, younger star players be placed in awkward positions before, where their expectations are a lot higher than what they're actually delivering on the ice. I have to clarify this as well, but we wouldn't be having this conversation about Trevor Zegras. There wouldn't be the need to ask about accountability and everything, and there wouldn't be a need for Greg Cronin to go out there and label all the bad things that Zegras does in a game if Zegras was just better, if he was scoring at a 60-point pace like he was last year and the year before that, if he was just having a better season than scoring 9 points in 26 games, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. If you do the point production based on that, 9 div 26 multiplied out by 82 is a 28-point pace. Trevor Zegras has played at that this entire year, and I get it. It's not comparable to other seasons because, oh yeah, he didn't have a training camp, he wasn't participating in practice, he got off to the wrong foot, he was out for a few weeks in the middle of January, and he's had some health problems. So it really hasn't been the best season at all for Trevor Zegras. And the trade rumors and everything else, and people talking about whether or not he'd want out, that's all starting to come out here because, hey, the Anaheim Ducks have some other forwards. They've got Mason McTavish, they've got Leo Carlsson, they've got Cutter Gauthier chilling in the ranks, and all these other guys that can come out here and play a very similar kind of style. Trevor Zegras does not play the same game as Gauthier, Carlsson, and McTavish. He's a very skilled and flashy player compared to those three. So if you're talking about styles, if you're talking about meshing, okay, there's a very real argument to say that Zegras doesn't really match the style of play that a lot of these other guys are going to bring to the Anaheim Ducks, and if he's going to take a back seat to some of these guys in the future, then okay, you could say there's a world where he maybe wants out. Now the coach comes out here and says, yeah, if you're turning pucks over, if you're taking foolish penalties, you gotta own up to that. There's a non-negotiable standard here, and it's up to you to bring it out. So I'm super intrigued into seeing how this is going to go. The Anaheim Ducks do play themselves a game later today against the St. Louis Blues, so we'll see where Zegras' ice time and everything is at then. But for now, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Anaheim Ducks head coach Greg Cronin calling out Trevor Zegras for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Do you agree with these sentiments? Do you think Zegras is in a precarious spot? Do you think this is going to help him in his development, or do you think it ultimately fuels the decision to leave a little bit more? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.